I'm headed to the antique malls in Fort Smith, but I happened to notice that this sale was happening. I stayed over here last night, and the sale starts at 8. Well, I'm up and ready, so even though it's mostly contemporary, I did see one whole vase, but I think is really cool. So we're going to see if it's still there. So the trick to shopping a contemporary-looking estate when you're into antiques and vintage is to zero in on the things that look older, like this Bohemian-esque bottle. Is going to be 1970s in all likelihood because of the amber color and the etch. $12 is reasonable. I can get 30. And then I just give the rooms a quick scan because what I'm looking for are contemporary art pieces. That's too new. These are going to be a little too common. There are some made in England that sell for money now, though. We sold a lot of Fontanini and other plastic angels at an estate sale we did in Cortland. But they are just too contemporary for my case. Wall plates are newer. A lot of what's in here is traditional, but newer, which is what we see in a lot of suburban and southern house sales. However, you never know. Old books sometimes filter through the generations. Orville Faubus was the governor who refused to integrate the schools in Little Rock, which led to Eisenhower sending in federal troops to enforce the federal law. So this would be of interest to civil rights folks. This has some age, but I think it may be more regional than I can sell unless I went online with it. Books are priced about right, $3 for hardback, $2 for softback. So if we do see anything that's vintage, it's certainly going to be affordable. But again, most of the things in this house are newer, and we expected that. But we still look to see if there are things like original art pieces or regional artists that might be worth something, even a contemporary. And then, wow, the living room. It's nice looking. There's one old piece of furniture. Regular resellers can make plenty of money on these sorts of things. I think I see a lot of It's Employed Christmas items. I sold those at estate sales before. They're pretty decent money. Let's check out this hand-painted Fitcher. This looks like something from these 50s or 60s. Kind of a pretty pattern. $6 is a fair enough price. Probably could get one piece of Corella. I don't see a lid. One piece of early American press. Guitar could be interesting, but again, it's pretty new as well. I really am looking for older instruments. Anytime I see them, though, you will find those sometimes in estates like this. This is over 40 years old, and it commemorates the marriage of Charles to Lady Diana Spencer back in 1981. I haven't seen this piece before.
And don't know, but I need the prices right here. I'll more follow it.
Oh, okay, thank you. It's not any big deal, but it's cute because it's a butterfly. And this has something of an older look. Looks like early 70s Sarah Coventry. And, well, they're certainly cheap. And I've already heard her say to put things together that she's discounting because it seems like a very professional outfit, but I think they realize they have a lot of newer things that are perfectly nice and just not in high demand right now. So price is going to be key to selling a lot of this. And I think they realize that. So I'll put these in my pile and we'll just see if they want them in. I don't see any other jewelry that's really exciting. The owl is cute, but pretty shiny on the back, real high quality. And it might as well be fussy. You do have a lot of nice jewelry already. Okay, well, my pile is started. Now, here's some older furniture, but it's hard rock maple and such good quality and not really easy to sell. Certain areas close to where it was made, it seems still popular. Nice older chair, but again, nothing I see that's old for fast sale. This is a nice, very cherry-stained mahogany chest of drawers with the Sheraton-style holds. This is going to be out of about 1950. And it's a great piece of furniture for the price. All of these are not much demand. Unless a sign tells me not to, I always open the drawers because sometimes the estate sale companies miss a drawer here or there. So that one wasn't super exciting. He's worth looking because I have found some pretty amazing things just sitting in drawers, and a lot of times they just quote a cheap price on them. Again, the holiday and stuff is all newer. This is a nice looking sideboard here. $300 is really not too much for it. And I love corner cabinets. They're very useful if you have a corner that's empty, but it's just too big for me to take, and apparently for a lot of other people. Cute Halloween, nothing old. Well, throw pillars everywhere means they sold something. Nice looking, but contemporary bedroom set. This is nice for about 1950. And let's see, flare glass, I didn't see what it is. Nice little mid-1900s hall table. But for the most part, it is the furniture and this mirror that seem to have age or be in old frames. That's a pretty good price, actually. French-styled marble-top table from the 60s. Otherwise, not a lot in. Not really anything old. The turn beds are small, but you could push them together. It's a nice look. 1930s or so. Nothing really interesting there. I mean, the candles are nice, but they're not old. And the back you would even, wouldn't love. Well, my whole piece was gone, but I got a Bohemian decanter and a chalice from the marriage of Charles and Diana for $17. Well, I've been needing it fixed, and here's my place. Antique Addictions Collectibles is a great name for a store. It gets right down to it. We are outside of Conway, Arkansas, right by the main road, so let's see what they've got. First thing you see, Leo Ward, Bluebird of Happiness, and this one was made in Arkansas, 1990s. I'll take it for that price. This place seems like they have a mix of decorator goods and things that are old. That one is a little newer because that felt is so flat. That was a fun jamboree in Idaho back in the 60s from everything I heard from the older scouts in my troop. Apparently they got people from all over the world to go to that. Here we go, a little Skookum doll. That's nice. And I like the hooked rug underneath. That's probably the right price. This is going to be a place where you have to look through a lot of decorative to find the old things. Blendo glass, for example. That's a nice set in that color. And some kitchen, although again, a mix of contemporary and just useful stuff along with the stuff that's antique and vintage that I like. I like the plastic fantastic 1950s square bowls. This is akin to beetleware. It was lighter and not quite as strong as Melmac, but it was very cheap back then. All right, I like the way they've used the door as a decorative accent. They do definitely have a decorative focus here. Interesting, I just saw this same exact picture of Jesus, the lithograph, in the same frame with the candid top corners yesterday. It's funny how you see things in certain areas. They were all distributed in the same place, like the brass bird bookends. We see those in many parts of the country, but especially the Sun Belt. And the bell is nice. Definitely they got the memo on brass. Now these folks are making stained glass windows and selling them along with used goods and a few things that are vintage, like this Empoli chalice here in the sky blue color that I like. At a price I really should consider. This front plate here is Vernon Kiln's Fruitdale. I just found the gravy boat in a thrift store. This has some chips where they do not belong, though. Another one of their 1940s patterns to help replace the English pieces we couldn't get anymore. Before Le Creuset, there was Descoware, and Desco was made in Belgium and imported by D.E. Sanford, hence the Desco name. Julia Child loved this stuff and used it on her show a lot, and at its peak in the 1960s, it was a big seller, but Le Creuset crashed the market and advertised a lot more and took it over. At $75, this is a good alternative. Lipper and Mann were known for a lot of Christmas collectibles coming from Japan, but Blue Danube was a very popular dinnerware line they also made 1960s through about 1990s. That square is the newer label. The old label was in a little ribbon and said Blue Danube. Very good quality and collectibles still, made in Japan. I've had all of these pieces and they've all sold for me. More stained glass. I really do like the Frank Lloyd Wright inspired one here in the front. Great colors and design. Swans are nice. Pulleys are nice. They have a lot of cool things that you could use. Oh, and then in your yard, tiny wieners. Well, much like that estate sale, I'm seeing more old furniture here than I'm seeing in a lot of other categories. This is a nice pie crust table from about 1940. This is an older lead piece of glass. with a frame that's been repainted. And let's look at the cool old globe. I love globes because you can look at the countries and figure out what era is this. So let's see here. It tells us that it is $48. And we have French Indochina, so that's before Vietnam broke off from them in 1954. Now, the dark copper luster that you see with the blue painting is mid to late Victorian. This is the original stuff. Really like the colors. The white and the pink is from the 30s. The 30s, a time of great naivete. This symbol was not yet representing Nazism. This was actually an ancient Sanskrit symbol and was also a good luck symbol for Native Americans. So, of course, you would make it into a quilt around 1930 when this was done. It's very striking. It's a great pattern, but you have to understand why it exists. This is fun from the same era. Look at those poppy flowers all over this. These have an unusual mark. The company was called Decor 127. These are going to date to the 1930s. These are made in Germany, and they are all marked on the bottom. Well, what have we here? This is an appraisal from the time before appraisals had standards. You really can't rely on much of what you read in these, but it is interesting to see what people thought things were worth at the time. It wasn't until 1983 in the death of Georgia O'Keeffe that the appraisal industry actually got uniform standards, but this is a neat-looking table under all that. Back in 1969, they valued this tambourette at $600, and that seems to be what they're asking now. These were given out with labels you redeemed from bottles of wild turkey, and actually $30 for the set of 6 is a pretty good price because they're the tall tumblers, and a lot of people like this style. It's not just for the bar collectors, although that's who seems to be the biggest customer. Those are 60s era. Very cute little Dimitas cup and saucer with the raised moriage beading from Japan around 1900. That's sweet. And here's another Dimitas. Dimitas are nice because they tend to be very well detailed because they're so small, interestingly enough. I like this table that flips up and becomes a game board. That's pretty neat, especially the way it tilts away. You could also use it as a fire screen, or you could just get this, which is a nice tapestry fire screen. I'd be a little afraid of embers getting out and maybe damaging that piece if I use it in front of a fire. Here is a very pretty, very sculpted bowl. This looks like RS Prussia, but it's actually RS Germany, which was the successor factory after Prussia became the German state. And this is strange. I wish it was fuller in better condition, but these are different colognes and perfumes in one castellated bottle. I think that's actually pretty cool. Looks like something that would have been a novelty around 1950 approximately. Just wish it was in a little better condition. Big old papier-mâché goose. Some cool 50s canisters. There's just a little of this and that in all of these spaces. I like the squirrels climbing the tree. That's a Japanese knockoff of Treasure Craft. And then this little lucite piece with the yellow rose of Texas. We're close to Texas. $7.50 for the pair of candle holders is pretty good. People like those now. I know some people did them in shop class, but they were also done professionally. Purple punch set. That looks like a lot of fun from the 60s. Probably late 60s. Purple seems to come into color briefly, and the glass companies hate making it because it's bad for the kilns, so they try to get it out of production as soon as they can. I like the wooden sailboat. I like pond boats in general. This one's more of a desk model with the brass trim, and it's pretty flat brass, so I don't think that's wildly old. It's going to be a mix in a place like this. Chopper hoppers. Japanese from the 60s. I have yet to find one of these spun aluminum apple ice buckets in good shape. I'd love to own one. Well, this globe is much more contemporary. Vietnam is united as a country, and Kazakhstan is independent. So this is pretty recent. Jack Daniels barrel furniture. This is fun. I like the chair. This would be fun to have in a country store or a man cave, quote unquote. Even a barrel made into a cabinet. Pretty cool reuse and repurposing of these things, I'd say. Even though they're newer, it makes sense. Here are the cream and sugar that go with the electric sunbeam coffee pot. with the very similar to Trilon and Perisphere mark on the sides. That was definitely to ape the New York World's Fair in that style, right around 1940, and it's very popular with deco collectors now. Viking Amber console from the 1970s, and behind some cute little egg cups and Tom Tom the Piper's Son by Shawnee. The teapot is cute. Also by Shawnee is Corn King with the yellow coloration. There's one that's a little lighter that's Corn Queen. There's the range side shakers. Would have gone on the stove. All right, these are pretty cute, I have to admit. They look like they are Japanese little lightweight turtles. It's too bad that there isn't a creamer to go with the teapot and sugar, because that's a really great set, and people love anything turtle. Turtles are a good thing to buy. Jars of marbles. I see some acro agate and older, along with some solid colors from the 50s. Here's a neat space. This is one of the first ones I've seen really dedicated to a theme, and this theme seems to be McCoy pottery in particular. Really nice to see the pedestal with these jardinières. They're not inexpensive, but I haven't seen them together like this in a long time. Great color from about 1935. Here's a bunch of fun yellow glass. Lancaster and a few other companies did the yellow. It was not as common during the Depression era. I just sold the three-toed plate in a live sale recently. These are cute because of the honeycomb shape. That's the round McCoy mark, popular in the 40s and 50s. These are McCoy pieces as well. The umbrella stand is nice. And there's our price on that. They're not cheap. There's a nice handled piece too. I really like the sculpting on this period. These are from the 1920s and 30s primarily. And there's another earlier one with the pedestal under a Nelson McCoy jardinière. Or is that brush McCoy? But of all of these textured patterns of McCoy, I really love the angelfish and the butterflies. These are some earlier ones. You know, the prices on everything in this space seem about what they should be for retail, but they're specializing in it, which means you're seeing a whole bunch of different pieces and patterns at one time in one place. And that is worth paying a little extra for if you're a collector. This is a variation of the onyx glaze. And they also have Bessie P's Goodman prints. She was one of the most famous female commercial artists of her time, because in the 1930s, she hit on doing these baby prints and writing poetry to go with, and they were very popular. Department stores had entire sections devoted to her, and the prices shown are about right, including the markdown. Seems like almost every mall worth its salt has Tupperware now. There are some earlier colors and pieces in here, the grays. This is interesting, out of the 70s, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how that worked. It looks like something you put dog treats in. They've got blues, they've got yellows, lots of 70s colors there. And then there's the bread warmer. This is actually from Francoma, one of the last things they made before they went out of business. A lot of 90s kids collected the M&M's figures. A lot of 60s girls collected these little headpieces. This is Napco ware. With all her jewelry and being intact, that's a pretty good price on it. This is a fun thing. People are putting those on their walls as decoration. 1950s era Chinese checkers with the graphics. And for that matter, license plates as well. You know, the 1920s ovens made a lot of sense. You didn't have to bend over to get a big heavy hot thing out of the oven like you do now. And then you have the range built in. It seems like a real space saver. I do like fishing lures. The fiberglass ones are later in time. Really, the wooden ones are the ones to look for. Hedden's Tiny Torpedo is one we see fairly frequently. I see salmon plugs there with the white and the orange faces. And then this thing that looks like a pickle with spinners on it. There's also some flies for fly fishing. Tying those is a real art in and of its own, actually. Kalaga tapestries are Burmese, and they go all the way back to the mid-19th century, back to the dynastic era. This one's priced at $375. The word Kalaga means curtain, and that's part of the reason they're so heavily stuffed, is they were actually meant to keep light out, which means then you might need this equally glamorous Hollywood Regency lamp if you're in the 20th century, or if these dated back further, you might need a girandole with lots of candles to light the way. Very pretty piece there. This would have been part of a larger set originally. There'd have been one of those and two smaller ones flanking it. The gingham dog and the calico cat have been reversed somehow. We have the calico dog and the gingham cat made in Japan in the 1950s. And then we have these owls in Leicester, and these look 1930s, but when you pick them up, they're actually made in China. They date to probably the late 70s or early 80s. They're very cute, though, and they are vintage. At some point, we're going to have to determine which Chinese things we think are collectible. This is a Norcrest piece, the hen on the nest, complete with eggs. That's a very cute salt and pepper shaker. Shirt tails will be familiar to some 1980s kids. It's all about the cute. And speaking of cute, there's Thumper in a cell from the Disney store. Now, the problem is that the Disney store and the Warner Brothers store sold a lot of these, so there's more of a supply out amongst the public than the demand can handle. You really want to look for signed ones to find real value. You will sometimes see little children's books like this used in patriotic displays. This is Our Country's Story. Looks like late 40s or early 50s, telling baby boomer children about America and what was great about it. Explores the founding of our country, Abraham Lincoln. It's even racially balanced in the illustration, so this is something that must have been sold in a northern school back in the day. We also see the Wright brothers. And because of the horrors of war so fresh in everyone's mind, emphasizing that people can learn to live together was a very important message in the early post-war era and might need to be taught again in our era. There's an entire Anchor Hawking Punch Bowl set, the early forest green, which came out in the 1940s and was very popular at Christmas. But as the enamelware pots you see here tell you, those colors are good any time year-round. All right, there is the big pile of linens, lots of hankies and doilies and such. And behind, lots of kitchenware that could go on top of doilies somewhere. This place really has the McCoy. This one's damaged, but it's the row of trees, and this is an early piece from around 1910. This place has an entire separate section that I did not know was here, so we have more looking to do. A lipstick red ice bucket from the 70s. That's pretty fun. A tree for mugs. This guy is neat. There's a whole series of these. These are Czech glass. They're 1960s and 70s, and they're mainly doctors and other professionals, and you can tell what kind of a doctor depending what they're holding. I've seen the dentist with a big syringe. This guy is holding a heart. They're very detailed for art glass, and they are very literal, which I think is actually really fun about them. Oh, I've got to clean one of these off so I can show you. These are called Whistle While You Drink, and they came in a pack. All right, let's see if the Brownie Hawkeye is in here. It's certainly priced reasonably. I like them when they have the original boxes, although this one's missing part of the box. There we go. Nice model, but it's a basic one. Lightweight old sewing tables are fun for craft rooms because a lot of times they have your measurement marked right in them, which is very convenient. Then you don't have to go looking for your tape measure every time you want to cut something. I'd really like to find some jewelry caskets in good shape. This one's not bad. The liner is in good shape. That's really important to me. And the price is fair. I don't think there's enough money in it for me to get, though. Darn. A couple of pieces of Roseville pottery that are real from the 30s. The magnolia here with the big wide bowl, and this one is the freesia, but I always like the shape of that cornucopia. That's priced about right. They're a pretty basic piece. They made a lot of these, but I think it's just very graceful. This one, on the other hand, is a fakeroo. Look how the color of the clay is different. It doesn't say USA because we finally told the Chinese to quit putting USA on things made in China. I would like to smash it on the ground, yes. Bauer Pottery made a lot of solid color pieces in the 50s like this. There's the Bauer of Los Angeles. They went out of business in 1962. Wow, that's a very complete and really nice condition set of canisters. And it's in English language. A lot of these were made in Czechoslovakia and are written in Czech. The teapot you don't see nearly as often, especially in the lily. And fuchsia is another pattern that's more desirable and always has been in the Roseville. And the winner was Le Creuset. This is just a little one. They ultimately took over Descoware and the market because of really heavy-duty marketing, and the quality is very similar, but they won. A good name in luggage is Hartmann, and I noticed these tweedy pieces with the leather all appear to be Hartmann luggage. And the prices are pretty good on them. I'm going to check them over for condition, because I actually think some of these are pretty saleable. You might have a job trying to figure out the combination. You might end up having to dial 999 different numbers in order to get it. Now with luggage, the interior has to be clean like the exterior for it to really sell for good money. There is the lock that we don't know the combination for. We'd have to play with that. Some staining in the bottom. I like that it has the original tag for the owner's label unused though. Old ammunition crates are probably the most collectible, even more than soda fountain. This is an old Peters Victor from about 1950. In 1955, Treasurecraft put out the barrel line, and the barrel line really changed the direction and the fortunes of the company. The real copper and this wood grain were just very appropriate for a lot of Western interiors. It was very popular in California at the time. And of course, you've got to remember this is the 50s when all things country and Western and cowboy were dominant in decorating. The barrel cookie jar ended up on the set of the Dick Van Dyke Show. So this actually lasted in their line for quite a number of years. Someone's having fun repurposing these things as wind chimes. And if they have the right sound, they can be fun. Again, there's a lot of stuff that's more for decorator sense than is necessarily really old, but I do like the way they painted this piece of furniture. Even though I usually don't like painting, I think they did a good job of it. There are a lot of lakes in this part of Arkansas, so you will see minnow buckets, and minnow buckets are pretty collectible now, especially any of the old ones in galvanized steel. Also ammo, definitely old packs are selling. And old toys. These are all Tonka graters from my era. This is a rustic table that someone has put together. And now we are entering the next room where there's a lot more booze and also a lot of books. These are the types of law books and other things that maybe are not terribly interesting in and of themselves or are outdated. But if you actually sell them to somebody who's decorating a space and they just want the look, you can sell these for $100 and $200. Now, this piece is not Treasurecraft. Look how even and uniform the brown is. It just has a number. This is American Bisque, believe it or not. They did feel the need to compete with this Sequoia-ware line. Old utilitarian strong boxes and letter boxes from the early 1900s sell well when you have the keys, and here the keys are with this one. That is very encouraging. It opens up easily enough. We'll have to try the locks. Just make sure they actually work, because these were very cheap mechanisms, and oh boy, is it jammed? Does it hold it shut? Only $9. Well, let's hope that it works right. I'm not sure how you would strip that horrible paint off, but this is a pretty decent looking steamer trunk. It is missing one drawer as well, but it is cheap, so a good restoration project. My friend Rhonda in Florida is of Swedish extraction, as am I, and she really likes these little Dala horses, and this one has the right town name on it, and it's only $2. Definitely have to have that. Notice how the pastel appearance of this Hull pottery base differs from the darker rose built. Another friend of mine looks for these honing devices, these stones and sharpeners, and he has a really advanced collection, so I know he's got this one already, but they are collectible. And this one is another hone, a little more obscure. You might like that. We are not too far from Oklahoma, where the Francoma plant was, and the Oklahoma State Plate was something that they sold very well in their factory store. This one is in the bone white and from the early 70s. Yes, Hall China made cuspidors, small enough for a woman to carry under her shawl in the early days. These would have been made for institutions, floors, railroad cars, that sort of thing. Another neat McCoy textured vase, this one in yellow. Yellow seems like a really popular decorator color this year so far. It's bright and happy, so why not? And this one has a very good mark. This should date to sometime right around 1945. It has a few little glazed skips, as is often the case with McCoy, but still a nice looking piece for the price.
From the 1910s to the 1950s, you would see ornithological cards in everything from cigarettes to baking soda. Ah, now there's the original. This is the Climbing Bear Salt and Pepper Shaker. Treasure Craft also came out with the Climbing Squirrels, which were widely copied. I'm not sure who gets credit for these really cool zebra salt and peppers, but these seem to date from about 1950. Very rich in color, and the etching is nice. These are Bohemian, and these were made into lamps in the United States using parts from overseas. These would be somewhere in the 1970 vintage. This piece is also from Bohemia. Most of these red stain pieces are attributed to Egerman, whether old or 20th century, because the successor company is still making them. Fenton Silvercrest may be common, but it really does look good on colors. Very strong pattern. Kansas, the wheat state, well, this is certainly beaten up, but old license plates are popular. Kansas wasn't always the wheat state. I just sold a paperweight from a mill there that indicated that that was a new thing brought by Russian immigrants. Here's a lot of other plates. A very plain utility chest of drawers with faux painting. This was something that was really going out by the 1930s, but what's great about it is it has this mirror in the side, perfect for a child's room. Hello, everybody. Antique malls can be pretty good places to get old tack. I see a lot of saddles that seem like they're pretty usable, priced pretty well, because in an antique environment, these are mainly just being used as something for display. But that second one there is a custom model, and all of these are between $300 and $500. When I think Americana, I think early 1900s oak furniture. And this set put together, it's not all original to each other, but it works really well. The table is actually an English pub table. It is oak, however, so the wood matches, and it's all been lightened up. And these are American, these ladder back chairs. The style is early Victorian, but these are different because these are made in Scotland. My family are part Scottish, so I suppose there's some genetic memory trigger here for me. It has a registry mark like the English did, but it is so darkened in you can't really tell what it is, but it also has the Scottish maker on it. They didn't do a lot of dinnerware there. That was primarily in Staffordshire, but Scotland and England have had contentious experiences over the years, so they had their own home industries. It's bad enough that the cobalt blue glassware with Shirley Temple has been faked, but this never was produced originally. This is absolutely false. One of the few really collectible old liquor bottles is this one because it's a Formula One style racer from about 1970. All right, what do we have in this space behind a painted kitchen queen? Well, yeah, lots of antiques, lots of kitchen-y stuff. I'm looking to see what grabs my eye. These are Sooner glass here. The Sooner glass made in Oklahoma just down the road. The fiery orange one is definitely harder to find, and you can tell why. It's a stronger color. The greens and the whites maybe not quite so much, but they did have a lot of variation. The purple tends to sell better. And they did swans and birds and vases of all sorts. Another Arkansas pottery, of course, is Camark. This is very typical of their 1930s molded ware. Really graceful shapes. The glazes are really good. Compare this in quality to a McCoy, and honestly, Camark was light years ahead at the time. They also had a very new factory in the 1930s, having just opened doing artware in the late 20s. Lots of these neat tobacco jars and cans. These are all relatively common, though. These are 1950s. You see these quite a bit. So condition is everything. That one's in nice shape. Some of these are more common than others, but they do not have the value of the turn of the century ones. They're still neat to collect, though, and pretty useful to hold things. And they look good on a shelf. Very colorful, lots of variety. And these are a good starter level right here. There's also old cigarette cartons made of tin. Yes, there are. Old gold is a perfect example. There's even a place to strike your match on the bottom. A tale of three swans. The two on the left that are the same that are white are by Hull Pottery. This one in the middle is Camark with the double swan painted at the bottom. This one has the mark. Sometimes they don't. The one on the right is unmarked and more contemporary. Next to it, we have a bunch of TV lamps. I like the horse. We see the ships fairly often. And the deer is nice. That's Hager. Okay, these are really fun. I like that there's a whole set and that there's ceramic in a bale. And these are by Dryden Pottery, another one of the Arkansas potteries. They do more of an artware line. There's your signature. These are actually fairly complicated because they have the textured base as well as the smooth, and then a different glaze color on the interior. It's actually a pretty good price for the entire set with the holder. Originally, they started in a small town in Kansas, and when the freeway was announced and was going to pass them by 30 miles, they decided that they needed to move to Hot Springs, where the tourists were, and they are still in business there today. Plastic Fantastic from the 50s. Love the decals on these, and I think these decals were factory. You could buy decals and put them on as well, those old water-based ones, but I think these actually came from the factory this way. There's the entire set with the lids. That looks like it's in really good shape. I am a sucker for things shaped like log cabins, especially when you can tell someone made it a while ago. This looks like it's from the 60s or 70s. They're asking $75. It even has a cord of wood. The big Falstaff tray looks old, but these were 1960s reproductions of earlier ones. They're pretty collectible, though, because they are big. In the early 50s, the Japanese mainly made fine china. By the early 60s, they were starting into the dinnerware market, and Napsco Springtime was one of the most popular patterns of that time. A few of the later of the Royal Dalton pieces were made for a short enough time that they actually are fairly collectible now, and the Fireman is absolutely one of those. This one tends to sell for up to $50. Some more McCoy pottery, including that interesting centerpiece with the birds. And then this one is a little Camark piece with the Arkansas State label from the early 1930s. That was a great Art Deco design. You see them unmarked a lot. But I am really captivated by this McCoy piece. I just haven't seen that before. It looks more like Hull pottery from the era. And I'm sure that color blend was deliberate to compete with Hull pottery. I'd buy anything that represents hands. They always sell. These are by McCoy. In the 80s, unicorns really became a big thing, and the one in the middle here is by Breyer. R. Atkinson Fox. He worked under other names, so you'll find sleepers out there. It's just very pretty. It's been collectible for a long time. Has this cottage look. They are not asking a cheap price on this, but it does have good color, and it is in the original frame, so I can see why they find it likable. Another version of a big Falstaff tray from the 1950s or 60s. And they are appealing graphically. They do look like the old-time stuff. Well, there is a good piece of advice. If the liquor store is going to close on Election Day, you better get your hooch the day before, because you might just need it. You can tell this is a Dayglow piece from the 1960s. More ancient, though, is this little shot glass from a bottling company in Missouri. This is pre-Prohibition, which means it's true antique now. And it means that, well, this company probably is long gone. Ceramic companies in the 1930s really enjoyed making jumbo-sized display pieces for their clients, and Arnholt's tea got this, which appears to be by Hall China. They said it has one little flaw, and so they're asking $85 for it. I think these are really fun. They're just huge. You have to have a big kitchen for it. Or from the same era, you can get these very winsome Hall Crocus serving pieces. And they don't take up nearly as much room and are maybe a little more practical. This is well put together. Doug's Corner, and they've got lots of tools and other things that a certain segment of the collecting population looks for. This looks like a device of torture. Oh, and it is. It's a chicken plucker. I have never run into one of these in an antique mall before. I have to say this is a new experience. Plumb bobs just have a neat shape, and they're usually made of brass. And so they are good sellers even to people who do not collect tools. I've seen them in art installations. Here's a very nice cherry pitter with the embossed information on the handle, and that's a pretty decent price. Speaking of kitchen tools, well, here you go. Wood handle, Bakelite handle, plastic handle, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. All of this stuff is still practical, and that's why people like to collect it. If it's in good condition, it looks cool and you can use it. Just like you can still use these jadeite dishes. These are Fire King in the Alice pattern. That's where you see the floral band over the J. Engrave rays. And they are a little more expensive than the others. As I recall, this mug, which is a Pyrex tea handle, is a match for a Ben Seibel dinnerware design. and that makes it more collectible. I like the hazel atlas striped glasses. I wish I had a whole set of these. I had a set once. It lasted a day. I've always sort of regretted selling it. If I could find them in the blue, I'd probably keep them for me. And the price seems right, actually. Hazel atlas, by the way, is an H over an A, not like Anchor Hawking's A-H. Falls-Graf salt and pepper, local interest. And then there's dots. I just love the dots patterns from the early 60s. They are so fun and effervescent. And they came in various colors. The green and the red are the ones I see the most often, but I don't see a lot of them in good condition. $50 on this one. Sewing benches are pretty popular with collectors now. If they're in good shape like this, they're not meant to take a ton of weight, but they certainly can take a pile of fabric on them while you wait to figure out what you're going to do with it all. I love the teapot holder on this. This is early 50s all the way. The salt and pepper shakers, it's all in great shape. It has a low number phone. I'm pushing it a little bit. I think I'm going to buy that for $12. I just think it's fun. These match Corelle-ware. They were by Gemco in the early 70s, and the price is right on these. Only $6 each. That is your daisy there. And the other one, I believe, is the butterfly. I think I might have to get those. They look like they're in good shape. When I see these embroidered towels, I always look to see if there are 7, because these series always had one for each day of the week. They get married, they go on their honeymoon, they go courting, they have a baby. Hopefully you got that all in the right order back then. Well, speaking of go-alongs, there's the daisy in the Pyrex bowls. Nice set there. $150 for the set of 4 is not impossible. And then there's a nice kitchen queen over there, a fairly plain one. I have to say I'm missing mine. I sold one in a store, and boy, it was great for display. Plain shelves just are not the same. Now this is curious. It says pure corn, like pure corn liquor, with lots of interesting animals, camels, pigs, monkeys. And it's Camark with the typewriter mark. I'm so surprised. I never have seen anything like this by them with ink stamp. Even after the factory officially closed, they kept selling stuff out of the shop until 1968. So you know there's some odd variants from later years that we haven't seen. This booth sort of feels gardenish, I guess, because spring's coming. But there is one interesting thing over here that looks a little different. And it's this Anthony mushroom. I've heard of these. I've never actually seen one before. There's the signature. Same company as Freeman McFarland. A little bit of red undertone coming out. That was the base color. I'm going to buy this. But I'm going to pass on what might be the prettiest thing in here, which is this parlor lamp. This is an original one for kerosene. That is very nice. Well, I wasn't sure at first, but that ended up being a fun place to shop. We all have our addictions. At least these just make our house nice.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.